Hello and welcome back to Refractions. I am Stephen Mallon, your host, and I am very excited. We have two guests today. We have artist Keisha Scarville and Marina Chao, curator from ICP. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So Keisha, I want to start off with you. If you can just tell me and us, what motivated you to become a photographer? We have a long history together. I mean, we went to school together, so it's just like we were
Oh,
there. Um,
a long
so
time ago. A long time ago. Oh gosh, what motivated me? I mean, I grew up in a household where my dad was always photographing. He was a consummate photographer, like anything that was going on. He was photographing it, and there was something about like, the presence of the camera um, within all these different spaces of like our experiences as a family and just kind of being here that I found really interesting and that I think I was captivated by. I was just kind of captivated by this kind of like the presence of the camera and the necessity of capturing these images, I mean, excuse me, these moments as images. Um, and I don't know if I would say that it motivated me to become a photographer, but I do reflect on it a lot, especially now. I actually was more interested in writing. I actually wanted to be a writer. And while in high school, I grew up here in New York City. While in high school, I was lacking art credits. And, they're like, in order for you to graduate on time, you have to take this art class. And the only class that was being offered was photography. And it was all darkroom. I wasn't really interested in it, but I decided to take it. And I had probably one of the most amazing teachers in my life, um, who one day, gave me a camera and just gave me the prompt to just walk around and just capture what I thought was interesting.
wow. So it
And
really is high school photo class out of your desire to actually graduate is what
yeah, yeah. And so that was, I mean, I like it was, and I remember it was, it like I remember kind of walking around and it was just like, okay, well, what do I find interesting? It was just kind of like this re-examination of my surroundings and what was going on. And so I just remember kind of like going into this really deep observational mode. And, my first time in a dark room and seeing the image like come into being in the developer completely blew my mind. And it was, I think everyone kind of relates it to this idea of magic. And so I remember that moment, and I remember in my mind, I was like, I want to have moments like this forever. And so that's what kind of started me on this path, on this journey.
very nice.
Mm.
Thank you. And Marina, what is your history with photography?
Oh well, so you mentioned that I was at ICP, but I was at ICP for many years, 7 years, and now I'm at CPW
Sorry.
in Kingston. No, it's a very common. Sometimes like I do that because I was at ICP for so long. But how did I come to photography? Well, I studied art history, so I don't come up from a making background, which many of my colleagues do. And then I ended up writing my graduate thesis on photography and video um, by contemporary Chinese artists at that moment who were sort of using the camera, using video to in a way thinking about the city and how the city, especially Beijing, Shanghai in China, were changing so rapidly at the moment. And that was a long time ago. This was in probably 2007 or so. So this was that's sort of how I got started thinking a lot about photography and video. And then my first job outside of graduate school was at MoMA in the Department of Photography. And so I've was there for about 5 years, and then at ICP, and now at CPW. So I've always kind of been focused on the medium.
Very nice. Yeah, so Keisha, was there like you're exploding right now, or you're having like this amazing moment? Maybe I'm just becoming aware, but we were talking about this in the green room. How many shows do you have up right now?
Right now, I have 4 exhibitions up. One at CPW, a group show. I'm included in a group show that I co-curated at ICP. I have a solo exhibition at Higher Pictures here in New York City, and I just opened another show in LA at Weber Gallery.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Was there a catalyst that has kind of launched your career, or like gotten you onto the stage where you're at a point where you're having 4 shows at once?
Um, I I mean, I think for me, I like to think that it's been definitely more of a marathon. It's just I think for I think since leaving college and coming back to New York City, and I think I've always been kind of thinking about like projects or things that I wanted to kind of photograph and engage with. Um, and I think for me, when I went back to Guyana, my family is from Guyana, South America, in the early 2000s. I went back to Guyana with my mom, and it was the first time I had been back in a long time. I'd been periodically going to Guyana since I was a child. And then once I got into school, and I hadn't been back for years, for a really long time. And so when I finally made it back, a lot had changed. My grandparents were no longer living, and like the family structure kind of like reordered itself. And I remember bringing like a Rolleiflex with me, like a twin lens Rolleiflex with me, and just like photographing my family, and just kind of having these moments where I was just documenting for documentation's sake. And that body of work, once I started sharing it, I started to kind of get into a couple of shows, and that started to kind of like build over time. I think it started to build over time. Me kind of really actively thinking about what that relationship was between myself and these 2 places in which my family was holding. So I just really just started to kind of just really go more strongly into that space. And I would say like the thing that was the most impactful for me, and I think started to kind of shift things for me, was I did a residency called Skowhegan in 2016. And before that, I did a residency at Lightwork. And those 2 residencies, I think, opened me up as an artist and as a visionary, but also kind of put me in places where, I could share the work and start to build out of that. So I would say those were 2 really impactful things. I think meeting Marina and Kim Burris and Janice Guy at Higher Pictures. And I think that was in like 2020, I think.
Yes, yeah, I think that was 2020. That's when I was there.
And D'Angelo Lavelle Williams was curating a group exhibition. And I was familiar with D'Angelo's work and a huge admirer. And so I remember like meeting with everybody at the same time and sharing my work. And I think that also kind of started me on a path too, where the show I thought was really important for me. And then that opened up a window for a solo show at the gallery, and things I think started to kind of, started to tread from there for me. But it was like all of these like, it's very hard for me to kind of like single out one single thing. It's like all of these like different things personally, um, and also I guess professionally, that I think kind of brought me to this place.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, sometimes there's like, a piece of press or like a exhibition that all of a sudden, but it sounds like it was more of an organic
Mm.
process of you working on your work. And like you said, you got to the residencies, made some connections, it gave you some time and focus and energy
Mhm.
to explore that.
Yeah,
And yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And that kind of, I guess that led me to one of the questions about how the two of you connected. But Marina, so you were working at the gallery that she was showing at, and that's
Yes, yes. I don't know why I skipped over that in my quick little run through, but yeah. So in between ICP and CPW, I was working at Higher Pictures with Kim Burris and Janice Guy, and it was, I think, my first experience sort of on the other end of things, on the gallery side of things, and it was a amazing learning experience. And at there's the pace of the gallery is so different, and then you are working with a bunch of artists, um, all like within a year, I was there for 2.5 years, so there were a lot of great connections. And I'm really grateful for the time I was there, and that's how I met Keisha. So that's, yeah, very special.
and Keisha, so you won an award at ICP, right?
No. CPW?
CPW. I keep doing that.
I
Sorry.
know.
So it's 3 letters. You won an award at CPW. Um, was that included? Was like the solo show part of uh the award, or was that something that came out after talking with Marina?
That was included in the award, right, Maria? Yeah,
Mhm.
that was included in the award. And I think originally it was going to be at photo fairs, and then that got shifted to actually doing it at CPW. Mhm. So the Saltzman Award, which, incredibly grateful for that opportunity. And it was like in an interesting way, it became kind of this like, I don't know if full circle is the right word, but my first solo show at the gallery, or my first solo show other than light work, at a gallery, was at Higher Pictures, and I worked with Marina really closely on that. And so then when it came time to do the show at CPW, it gave me the opportunity to work with Marina again.
So it sounds, Marina, that you're pretty familiar with Keisha's work and the process.
I think so. I mean, I was lucky enough to have, literally lived with it for a while at the gallery, and then I've been thinking about it
Mhm.
since.
Mhm.
And the MacBook came out, and so there's just been a lot of time for me to dig in more into the work and see it in all these different kinds of contexts.
Yeah, yeah. The MacBook was, I mean, if we're talking about Catalyst, that was huge. It's a huge, huge thing.
When you say MacBook, what are you referring to?
Oh, sorry. The
By shorthand, we're like,
It's like the new
MacBook.
computer?
no,
That's true.
no. I published a book with Mac, the publishers. And that book came out in 2023.
Okay.
And it was, yeah, it was a amazing experience putting it together. And yeah, it's like, and it, having it out in the world has been incredible.
Nice.
Mhm.
So when you were putting the show together, like, because CPW,
Yeah.
like, was the opening show of the brand new building? Like, was there a time where like you didn't know like where the walls or how big the space was going to be? Like, how far in advance were you able to lay this out?
You're asking me?
I'm asking both of you.
Okay. Um, I mean, we had a good chunk of time. I felt like it was rough, like it was at least eight months, 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, probably 8 months from when we started talking about it, and then maybe it took a little while to get things nailed down. But there was a moment um, where we were definitely under construction, and there
Yeah.
were, but we kind of knew the space more or less,
Yeah.
Okay.
even though it wasn't built yet.
Yeah. I mean, Marina, I think Marina, like you had like a strong idea of it. And I mean, I knew that I was like, okay, there's going to be walls. So let's
Exactly.
just work from there.
We're not projecting.
There you go.
And a door. You got a
Yeah,
door. You were able to...
an entrance, yes.
Um, was that a timing decision? Like the reason that it ended up being able to be at the actual space and not a festival show? Was that like they realized that just everything was going to line up for the launch?
That's, that decision was actually like kind of logistical. I mean, we were very lucky and very glad, and it was perfect timing in the end that Keisha show was part of the reopening cycle. It makes so much sense. But at the time, it had been just we had envisioned, and the prize founder, our board member, very generous, Lisa Saltzman, we had all kind of talked about it, and she had envisioned that it might be at photo fairs because we had a standing relationship with photo fairs, CPW did, and it was just so many eyes. I think what we wanted was for the emerging photographer prize to have sort of as many eyes on it as possible. um, but then when photo fairs just kind of it got postponed, I think postponed indefinitely at this moment. I don't really know what else is going on with it, but then it just made, of course, we were having it at CPW, and the timing just worked out like ideally. Yeah.
Gotcha. I
Yeah.
just
Sort of.
made the connection that when you're saying photo fairs, you're talking about the New York, I'm losing my English. Photo fair that's connected to the Shanghai fair that
Right.
happened
It
at
was
the,
at Javits. Yeah. And it was great. It was a great show. It was kind of like this alternative sort of, on the, I think at that point it was sort of like opposite calendar and of APAD, and sort of just trying to do a little something different. Um, and anyway, we had like a great presentation with them the year before, but we were happy. I'm very happy that Keisha show is at
yeah,
CBW.
it's definitely something to be said about being in a physical space for months versus, 72 hours on a trade show floor.
Yeah. I mean, we were thinking of doing it, potentially in both spaces. At some point, that was also like the idea that it would just, it would have its place there quickly, and then it would come. Um, but but it's so site specific, so
Yeah.
it looks beautiful at
And
CPW.
speaking about site specific, Keisha, the first time I saw that you were showing and presenting some of your work on fabric was when it was on some giant prints at the I don't remember the name of the space, but during Photo Fest in 2022 in
Yes.
Houston.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
I saw those, and it was wonderful. It was so happy to
Yeah.
see them. I was like, I know her. What has led you to presenting your work like that?
I mean, I think like I engage in materiality a lot in like my image making process. So I'm often kind of using materials and textiles in the way in which I'm constructing an image, or kind of thinking about like how to photograph a moment. Um, and so I think it became a natural progression to think about how those elements can live outside of the photograph, and also what is that relationship between the ways in which the image kind of shows up on a different surface in relationship to this kind of like paper flat surface on a wall. And so I think like for that project in particular, that was something that was like one of the first iterations. I think Placelessness of Echoes is the project. That was one of the first iterations where I started to kind of explore the possibility of using fabric, and by way of how the fabric is placed, that it kind of creates almost like a navigational space. Like, so now one has to kind of move around the photograph, but also like the possibilities of what it offered as like mediating what's on the other side. So the ways in which became like an interface too. So yeah, and I mean, I think fabric was something that really took hold of me. I think, of course, starting in like 2015 when my mom passed, um, I started to kind of engage in thinking about how to use like her materials as a way to kind of think about space, and think about navigation, think about presence as well. And so, yeah, so that was something that I started to become really curious about. But at a certain point, like the flatness of the photographic print asked for something more, So, with the show at CPW, and also knowing that it was going to be this kind of enclosed space, I started to kind of think, well, what are the possibilities of like combining fabric prints and traditional prints within this space, and people having to kind of move and have these two different encounters.
And is that like a curatorial conversation that you're having about like which images and the size, or are you like, is there specific images and specific sizes that you want to present like that?
I mean, I think everything was a conversation with Marina. Like I think, like there were things that I was like thinking about, and like things that I wanted to try, and sharing it with Marina. And Marina, I think also, which was great, was because Marina, I think, understands where I'm coming from. Or what I'm trying to say, even if I don't really know if I have the words for it. So um, I was, presenting it to Marina, and then going about like figuring out like what are the possibilities of making it happen within that space. Yeah, Marina?
Marina, what, sorry, did you,
No, no, I'm good.
how, when you're dealing with that as like additional like level of complexity, I guess, Marina, is that like refreshing, or like does that make the layout more challenging for you?
Oh no, it's great. It's refreshing. It's wonderful. And I think, I mean, how many times do I say this to Keisha? Like, I trust you implicitly. Like, I do hope I understand, and it's very nice to hear. Like, I hope I understand where she's coming from, and and what she had working in her mind. And no, from immediately from when she said she thought she wanted to, do something to activate the space a little bit more and make it so that visitors were having this sort of feeling of, passing a threshold, or or seeing two things at once, um, I thought that it was going to be beautiful, and just happy that we could make it work.
Awesome. Marina, there's just 4 galleries now on the ground floor.
There are four, that's right. So there's the front space, which has the Kenyan sisters, my sister, myself, photographed by Colleen and Kathleen Kenyon. And then Keisha's show um, is in one gallery recess. And then we have our community gallery,
Yep.
which is right now the second part of an open call that we put out for artists, local artists, any artist who could bring in a work physically would be included. And it was just a way, unorthodox, but just so salon style hang. But it was a way for us. We really just wanted to open the door and just gauge, since this was a big reopening, who's out there, what are they doing, what are they interested in, how can CPW help them, how can it be a hub for the community. Just wanted to put out feelers, and it was overwhelmingly uh, received. So that's great. Like very well received by the community. I think people were really happy that we're there. So that's exciting to know. And then in the last space, there's a beautiful Mary Ellen Mark show, Ward 81.
Mhm.
I was at the opening and just bravo on all of it. And it was such a great, energetic, opening of the new space. I think everyone
Oh,
was
thank
really
you.
excited. And so that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's what we want. Primarily, we have big ambitions, but primarily we wanted this time to just, to let people know that we're there and hope they come back.
Definitely will. So are you the curator for all 4 spaces?
Oh no. I have no. We have a small but mighty curatorial team that's also Adam Ryan and Brian Wallace, who's our executive director and who was the chief curator at ICP for many years.
Yes. He's going to be on the show in a couple of weeks, and I'm definitely
Great.
Looking forward to talking with him.
Mm.
So yeah, we've actually gotten through a lot really quickly. Like I said, Keisha, you have 4 shows up at the moment, but do you have anything else coming up? Like, what are some next projects, even if they're not like scheduled exhibitions? Like, what other projects are you shooting
Um, mm,
that you can
um,
share?
I mean, I think I'm I am currently pausing on like actively photographing. I kind of want to just take some time to kind of just think and read and just be. But I'm working on my second book with Mac. Um, and I'm preparing for a couple of shows that are opening in the summer. One is going to be at Arles, and the other one is a biennial in Brazil. So I'm working on that. I'm doing some talks. So I'm going to be doing a talk with photographer Carla Williams at ICP on March 11th. And then I'll be also doing a talk with Tina Kempt at CPW on March 27th. And Tina has written the essay for the new book that's coming out. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's kind of like what's like the next few months.
It's a lot.
I can't wait for that conversation at CPW with Tina.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Me too. Mhm.
And Marina, how about you? What's on your docket?
Well, we're working towards the next cycle of exhibitions, which Brian will probably talk to you more about actually, because we haven't we're in the process of finalizing and announcing them. But yes, we're already looking forward to the next 4 shows. And then we have our gala on May 10th as well, which is it's our annual gala, and that's where we award where Keisha received her Saltzman Prize last year, and where we'll be giving the Saltzman Prize again this year. And that's also something that I'm working on very actively right now, putting together the presentations for the jurors to select the winner from 10 nominated artists, emerging artists. So
Busy people.
Mhm.
Are you feeling motivated or discouraged about your work and working in general because of the political environment that we're in?
You asking me?
I'm asking both of you. Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily feel discouraged. I don't feel that at all. I think that I think rest is really important right now and necessary and can be a form of resistance. Um, yeah, and I mean, like in terms of creating and capturing I've been thinking a lot about, I'm thinking a lot about like ways in which to kind of manage nuance and legibility, particularly when it comes to Black bodies, or people of color. And so I think there's a lot of conversations that are necessary to have. Um, I think there's a lot of conversations that photography is in an apt place to contribute to. Um, and and specifically like around like what are all the nuances of what's happening right now, and this kind of, and how are our bodies legible in these spaces, and what are the ways in which we resist that. So
Glad to hear it's not dampening the enthusiasm for you. I mean, there are some mornings where I have to be careful not to listen to the news too much. Because it just the downward spiral for me is goes quickly, especially on social media. Sometimes I gotta like really just stop looking.
Yeah. I mean, I was having this conversation in LA, like in terms like this kind of feeling of disorientation, um, and how that is affecting folks, um, and need for protection. And so what does that look like? What does that look like for each of us? But as photographers or documentarians or artists, I think there's a lot, I think, that can be contributed to that conversation and to what's happening right now. And I think there's this kind of double edge of like rest and resistance that is necessary.
Yeah.
Personal.
How about you, Marina? How are you feeling?
Yeah, well, yeah, the same. I mean, some days I'm just like, and it's only been a month, but I mean it's only been a month this time, but I think, Keisha said it really well, where it's extremely frustrating. It's very scary sometimes, but then also it is this, photography is in a very specific place um to talk about these, to be used to talk about these things, right? I mean everything, but there is this sort of this place where photography comes from, clearly, that has a different relationship to sort of what's events, our lives, right? Our daily lives. So that's exciting. And I'm also, just for an example, to have a concrete example, you asked me like, what am I working on now? In my mind, I'm thinking about like a dream project, maybe sometime, or something maybe I just like sit on and think about for a while. But it's just about nothing too profound, but it's about humor as like a survival strategy, right? Like a strategy for survival. And it's about, photog in my context would be photography and video, but also just the question of, of all these different kinds of humor that sort of go from, it's not just like, haha, it's a comedy and humor to me are not necessarily, completely synonymous. So there's also all these other ways, of like some things that are grotesque, some things that are absurd, some things that are actually quite dark. I think, everything, comedians especially, they sort of do sort of come from this place, a lot of them, of transforming a kind of trauma into something that you can stomach, right? Something that you can deal with and confront. So I'm thinking about that. And then also like, what does humor mean in this extremely unfunny times? So it's just speaking of, like these ways, rest and rehabilitation, and these things that are ways to combat, or ways to resist some of what's happening. And I think, artists, of course, are always some of the best at showing us the way. So that's, in some ways, I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like, at least for, the next however many years.
So is that like, would you like put together like some potential artists you know, and bring that to Brian as like, hey, I have this idea. Here's some people that are touching on the issue of humor without being too, you know, blatant about it, or like,
I mean, they could, yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, I think I've mentioned this idea in passing once, but maybe if the time is right and if we can do it. But yeah, and I'd also like very just beyond all of those sort of like higher goals and ideas, I like to laugh in the gallery. I love when, an artist is something just so like sharp and funny.
Mhm.
And that I think a lot of people could use that experience
do you
in
see
sort
Phil
of in the gallery setting.
Toledano's AI work?
Who's sorry, I missed.
Phil Toledano,
Oh, I
he's
don't think
done
do I
some,
know that work? Yes, I think I do actually.
yeah, some like artificial intelligence illustrations of I think stemmed from the world ending essentially, but they're humorous.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, see, you're dealing, yeah, kind of always things that are the funniest kind of always deal with things that are the really
Gotcha.
tough. Yeah, sort of like impossible to think about otherwise. So I
Mhm.
think that's something. And it's also very I think it's funny that it's so at odds with conservatism. Like they're not
they are
funny.
not funny.
So, yeah. It's just something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
So I guess just to end on a positive note, Keisha, what is and for this is for both of you, but Keisha, what is your favorite thing about being an artist?
Oh, really? I know.
Just one.
Favorite things then.
My favorite thing. Ooh. Oh God. Um, That's a tough one. I don't know. I don't know if I have like, I guess it's mm, I think it's for me actually it's tied to being an artist, but I think it's also tied to just being part of a community. Like I love the community that artists create when it is being created. Like I think like to be in a space um, with other artists or to be in a space of encountering other artists' work and what they're doing and how they're saying and how they're expressing it, and having that conversation and that exchange of ideas and like the kind of like the making or this kind of collective building that I think that comes out of that is one of my favorite things. So I don't know if it's necessarily like this kind of personal thing. I think about it in relationship to um like what happens when everyone is kind of in this space or and all of these ideas are kind of brought to fruition and the visual that takes. So I'm thinking about that. Like when you initially asked that question, I thought about like my teaching practice and being in the classroom with other artists. I love it. There's nothing like it for me. Um, of kind of challenging the ways in which like artists kind of engage or the artists that I admire kind of engage ways to kind of challenge what is being put upon or these kind of ways in which society is kind of structured and how do we kind of poke holes at that or how do we kind of tweak that or how do we um, test what that's all about. That's what I love. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. It's great. Marina, how about you?
Oh, I mean, doing stuff like this, it's the same sort of the idea of the community, right? I mean, how lucky am I? It comes with its, ups and downs, art
Mhm.
world stuff, but how lucky am I to be able to be, having a conversation about art with you and with Keisha on a Monday afternoon, that's pretty lucky.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, thank you both. It's been really enjoyable. It's great to catch up with you, Keisha, and congratulations on all of the success. I knew about some of it. I didn't know about all of it. So that's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Really,
Yes,
really
thank
awesome.
you.
Is there anything else that the two of you would like to share? I feel like we touched on everything.
Well, come out to CPW and
Yeah,
see
thank
the
you.
shows there, and then come to ICP and see the shows there,
Yep.
and then get on a plane and go to and go see the
Go to
show,
sunny LA, go to see the show there.
and then
Right.
come back and go to Brooklyn and go to higher pictures. Yeah.
Complete the loop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And congratulations again. We'll see you all soon.
Okay.
All right. Bye.